In the still of the night, the engines hum beneath a sky without stars. Floodlights cut through the darkness outside Ofer prison as convoys of armoured vehicles move in disciplined rhythm. Each headlight beam glows against the dust, marking the beginning of a process that carries both symbolic and strategic weight. The Israel Prison Service, in coordination with defence authorities, has begun transferring Palestinian detainees ahead of their release, a move tied directly to the newly approved Gaza Ceasefire deal. What may look like a routine logistical operation is, in fact, one of the most sensitive undertakings in Israel's modern political history. These are not just buses, they are instruments of diplomacy. Inside them sit individuals whose names have been debated in cabinet meetings, protested over in public squares, and calculated into the balance sheets of negotiation tables stretching from Jerusalem to Doha to Washington. Ofer prison, located near Ramallah, has long been a central site of Israel's detention system. It houses a mix of security detainees, administrative prisoners, and those awaiting military court rulings. Ketziot, its desert counterpart in the Negev, holds a similar profile, but in a setting more remote, more austere, and more insulated from the public eye. Tonight, both facilities are part of a carefully choreographed operation. Prison buses, escorted by military vehicles, roll towards secure checkpoints where lists are verified and identities confirmed before dawn. This movement coincides with the first phase of the Trump-brokered Gaza ceasefire deal, an agreement that aims to exchange prisoners for hostages, bombs for dialogue, and uncertainty for what the White House has described as a structured and verifiable peace. The deal, crafted through weeks of back-channel diplomacy between US, Egyptian and Qatari envoys, is designed to halt the war's cycle of retaliation and open a corridor for humanitarian recovery in Gaza. According to Israeli officials, tonight's transfer covers the first batch of several hundred Palestinian detainees, including minors and women. In return, Hamas is expected to release the initial group of Israeli hostages held since the conflict began. The symbolism is potent. Two populations scarred by years of violence, each sending human lives across the divide in the hope of a new equilibrium. But even in moments of cautious optimism, skepticism runs deep. For many Israelis, prisoner exchanges evoke painful memories, most notably the 2011 Gilad Shalit deal, when over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners were released in exchange for a single captured soldier. Critics still argue that such moves embolden militant groups. Supporters, however, insist that moral duty and national solidarity demand that every citizen be brought home. That tension is once again playing out in real time. Inside Israel's political establishment, the debate has been fierce. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who pushed the ceasefire package through after weeks of internal friction, calls the exchange a necessary step toward restoring calm and securing the release of every Israeli captive, yet his coalition partners on the right accuse him of surrendering leverage. They warn that diplomacy born of pressure can never yield lasting peace. For Netanyahu, the calculus is clear. Every delay risks further bloodshed. Every decision invites political peril. In Gaza, the mood is different. The ceasefire's announcement has brought rare scenes of celebration in a landscape otherwise defined by destruction. Families in Rafah, Khan Yunis, and Gaza City have taken to the streets waving flags and chanting for freedom. To them, the release of prisoners, even a few hundred, represents validation after 2 years of bombardment, siege, and displacement. It's a tangible acknowledgement of their struggle and a faint signal that the world is still watching. Humanitarian agencies estimate that over 67,000 Palestinians have been killed since the conflict's escalation, with nearly 90% of Gaza's population displaced. Entire neighborhoods lie in ruins. And yet, amid the rubble, a new phase of politics is emerging, one that hinges on whether both sides can uphold their promises under the gaze of international mediators. At the center of this diplomatic push is the Trump 20-point Gaza peace plan. Its opening clauses outline a phased ceasefire, a monitored prisoner exchange, and joint oversight by a US-led security mission stationed along the Egypt-Gaza border 200 American troops are set to assist in verifying compliance, while aid convoys from the United Nations and the Red Crescent prepare to re-enter areas previously sealed off by fighting. President Donald Trump has called the deal a turning point for the Middle East and for peace built through strength. Standing alongside him, Secretary of State Marco Rubio declared, "We will not rest until every hostage comes home and until Gaza begins to rebuild under a new security framework that ends terrorism once and for all." Their message to allies and adversaries alike is unmistakable, that this agreement will serve as a litmus test for Trump's second-term foreign policy doctrine, assertive negotiation paired with visible enforcement. But for those whose lives unfold within the walls of Ofer and Ketziot, diplomacy feels distant. As the convoys move, relatives gather at checkpoints, holding photographs and handwritten notes. Some have waited years for a glimpse of news, others have lived entire lifetimes with uncertainty as their only constant. Outside the prison gates, a woman's voice trembles through the cool night air. "We've waited for this moment for so long," she says. "Maybe now we will see light again." The Israeli Prison Service, in its statement to the press, maintains that all transfers are being conducted according to approved security procedures under ministerial supervision and with full coordination between defence and judicial authorities. It's a dry declaration for what many see as a night of historic consequence. Behind those words, a web of logistics, secrecy and calculation defines every movement, down to the minute. At Ketziot, under the desert's dim floodlights, the scene unfolds with methodical precision. Guards inspect bus compartments, confirm prisoner manifests, and escort detainees through steel gates. The mood is quiet, almost procedural. Yet even here, officers understand the stakes. Each misstep could derail a process years in the making. As one senior warden put it off camera, tonight is about more than just releases. It's about whether trust can still exist between enemies beyond Israel's borders. The world watches closely. In Cairo, Egyptian officials confirm that international observers will oversee the transfer to ensure transparency. Qatar calls the operation a vital step toward rebuilding confidence. And in Ramallah, the Palestinian Authority, sidelined from much of the negotiation, issues a cautious statement urging that all names on the lists be made public. The European Union echoes that call, warning that peace without clarity risks becoming peace without accountability. For families on both sides, this night is personal. In Tel Aviv, candles flicker at Hostage Square, where relatives of those still held in Gaza pray that the exchange will finally bring their loved ones home. In Gaza's southern camps, mothers sow kefiyehs for sons they have not seen since before the war began. Across the divide, human emotion mirrors itself, grief, hope and exhaustion intertwined. The dawn that follows may look ordinary, but for those involved, it marks the beginning of a new and uncertain chapter. Whether this ceasefire holds will depend not only on politicians and generals, but on ordinary people's willingness to believe that it can. Ceasefires are fragile things. They require more than signatures, and they demand patience, restraint, and a shared understanding that even enemies can exhaust their appetite for destruction. Analysts say the prisoner transfer could serve as a barometer of that patience. If both sides honour their commitments through this first phase, international mediators will move forward with the next, lifting partial restrictions on fuel deliveries, reopening border crossings, and beginning talks on Gaza's long-term governance. But if either falters, the consequences could be swift and severe: renewed hostilities, diplomatic collapse, and another cycle of loss. For the moment, though, the focus remains on the road between the prisons and the border. The buses move under cover of darkness, guarded by soldiers who understand that a single miscommunication could unravel months of negotiation. Behind tinted glass, the detainees sit quietly, uncertain of what awaits them beyond the next checkpoint: freedom, exile, or simply another kind of confinement. Journalists are kept at a distance, their cameras permitted only controlled angles of the convoy's departure. The footage, officially released by the Israel Prison Service, shows vehicles framed against the faint glow of floodlights. It's brief, almost mundane, yet beneath that surface lies the weight of history. For decades, prisoner exchanges have been Israel's most emotionally charged acts of diplomacy. Each one carries echoes of wars past, of lives interrupted, of promises tested. As morning approaches, the first light spreads across the hills surrounding Ofer. The noise of engines fades, replaced by the low hum of news crews and the whispers of families waiting for confirmation. Some embrace in relief as names are verified. Others wait still, their hopes suspended in bureaucratic uncertainty. This night, October 10th, 2025, will be remembered not for the images of conflict that defined the war, but for the quiet choreography of release, for the paperwork, the convoys, and the fragile belief that maybe, just maybe, two sides locked in enmity could trade hostages for a moment of humanity. The trucks disappear into the horizon, red taillights dissolve into the morning mist. Somewhere beyond the camera's reach, prisoners are counted, papers signed, gates unlocked. And while politicians debate the merits of the deal and analysts question its sustainability, the meaning of peace takes its simplest form: a bus door opening, a hand reaching out, and the echo of freedom in a land that has known so little of it. For the Israeli guards driving through the night, for the Palestinian families waiting behind fences, for the mediators watching from distant capitals, this operation is more than a political transaction. It is a test of whether fragile trust can survive the weight of history. When the final convoy leaves Ofer prison and the engines fade into silence, a new question begins to take shape, one that neither force nor diplomacy alone can answer. After so much war, can peace really begin with a bus ride? And as dawn breaks over the hills of the West Bank, the answer, at least for now, rides in the quiet procession of those vehicles, a fleeting glimpse of what peace, however uncertain, might look like.